it's Missy Rowley, her and her husband own Stone Spot, and they've been so helpful. And also Stone Spot connects to Memorial Designer.
Right.
So I love that aspect too, because once you type it in one time, bam, it's in both.
Yeah. I was really pushing for it, but at the end of the day, it was just a much bigger expense with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's one good thing about, Memorial Assistant is it's one and done. It's paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was the QuickBooks Online. Like they pay, I think he said it's like just under $300 a year for QuickBooks desktop version, and the online is like $130 a month.
Yeah, that's about what I pay. Hi, Cameron.
Hey, good morning.
Morning. Well, afternoon for me.
Good afternoon, then. You guys can keep talking. Don't let me interrupt you.
I gotta go get some water.
Oh.
Afternoon already, huh, Aaron?
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's been a busy morning. We had to go reset a monument in an old cemetery. This thing was, the piece that had fallen over was over 2,000 pounds.
Ugh.
Our crane struggled a little bit.
Yeah. That's no fun. Did you get it done at least?
Yeah, we got it all reset, and then we had to go set a boulder real quick, and then the guys are going to finish up the other ones, and now I'm back at the house.
All right.
Did you get my email at like 3 something this morning?
About your logo?
No, about setting up a proof page. If you've got like something you're already gonna show us, I'm fine with that. But if you were still wanting like little projects, like things you wanted to see what we were curious about, that's one thing I've got.
Okay. I will do that. Grab the other one here.
But I really get a lot out of like it being orderly and systematic. Like I love how you went through the toolbox and all the functions and everything. That helps me a lot. Because then I can sit back and just open those videos and open your screen and then open mine and practice it side by side.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely the hope.
But I'm running into some problems here and there where like, and what I do as I go through the video is I just mark, like if it's at 1 minute and 20 seconds, I put, video 1 minute, 20 seconds, and then I'll describe whatever my problem is. So at some point I'm gonna start asking you for those answers.
You have those right now, or you want to do it later?
Well, I don't want to take away from what we're doing now.
I had some emails that asked about welding and trimming, reducing nodes, smoothing things out, combining versus grouping, adding space between characters, how to change a default font. And then you had your question about doing a proof page with a logo. And so those were the things that I was going to cover today, which shouldn't take too long. So we should have time if you want to cover stuff that you've got questions on.
Okay.
I've got one too when we find time. I found that when, like, if you take the text, like say you got the given name and the dates,
Okay.
and you go ahead and create a panel around it. If you select the text again and then click on the panel and try to recenter it, it all moves. All the text moves. So it's like it's not centering it right when you create the panel.
Okay, so let's take a look at that really quick. I'm just gonna share my screen here. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to just start some text, and I'll just type in my name. And you said 2 lines of text or 2 words?
Given name and then death date and birth date.
Okay. Did you have all of the text the same size or different sizes?
Usually like say 1.25 inches up top and then inch for the dates.
Okay, so I usually just start typing all of my dates like this in 1 inch, and then I'll
Okay.
break it apart, Control K to break it apart.
Mhm.
And I'll hit Control and the up arrow on the numeric keypad to make that a little bit bigger. So now we got 1.25 inches and inch.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so then what did you do?
Go ahead and select the text and then give it a panel in
Okay.
the panel maker.
Okay, so one thing I'm going to do before I make panels is I'm going to center the text on itself.
Okay.
Because when I broke it apart, this might have shifted slightly, just
Okay.
ever so slightly. So I'm just going to make sure that all of this is centered. If I undo that, you'll see how this line right here just barely moved.
Yep.
Right. So I'm going to make sure that this is centered first before I create the panel, because panels works off of lines of text centered on each other. That's what it's looking for.
Okay.
So just so you're aware of that. Okay, so I've
So
got
did
panels
you
over here.
Did you center it by putting a marquee box around it and then hitting C on the keyboard?
I did, yep. And let me
Okay.
turn on my on-screen keyboard stuff. Turn this back on here. Yeah, so I just marqueed around it and hit C to center, and it's just centering it to itself. It's not centering it to anything else. Okay, so I grabbed it like this, and I hit C on the keyboard.
Okay.
Okay, then what, Aaron?
Create the panel and then select the text again, and then center it to the panel.
So I'm grabbing the text, all of it at the same time?
I usually grab it all at the same time.
And then hold Shift and select the panel?
Mhm.
And then you hit C to center, or do you
Yep.
do it a different way?
Yeah, C to center.
Okay, so it was already centered.
So probably because you centered it prior to.
Yeah, because what would happen is if it wasn't centered, let's just start back over. So if I break this apart, make this bigger, and then build panels. Okay, so I went ahead and did it. Grab my text, Shift select this, and then hit C to center.
Yep. Yeah, move just that little hair again.
Yeah, so what happens there, and I'm not sure exactly why, but when you're doing multiple lines of text, especially when you've got this line, larger than the others.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly sure why, but I do know, and I'm going to do this. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to just put it at 0. So it's giving us a number there to look at. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When I break it apart, this one's still at 0, but this one is just ever so slightly shifted, 0.043 off center, and this is 0.042 off center. I think it has to do with possibly anti-aliasing. I'm not sure exactly. I just know that it's, when you break it apart, it's not exactly centered after you break it apart. So that's when I go and center it before I run my panels.
Okay.
If you're
I
really off,
kind of always had the thought that when you created the panel, it automatically broke it apart and centered it. So
no, all the panels, what the panel thing is doing is it's looking for text that is within a certain gap tolerance of being centered on each other. So if I do it right now with this text, you'll see what happens is it builds 3 different panels. That's because it's not close enough to center for it to recognize it as being, one block of text.
Gotcha.
But it's not actually moving the text left to right. All it's doing is spacing it top to bottom and then building around it.
Okay, makes sense.
So yeah, whether you center it first or center it afterward, either way, you're going to want to center it. I feel like anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a good question though.
Another question.
Did that answer that, Aaron?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, what if I had a programmable mouse?
Programmable mouse.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you know how you can
Yeah.
program keys and stuff in?
Uh-huh.
Could I program things like my text tool and my pick tool onto my mouse?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Awesome.
Basically, what you do is you would assign, so the pick tool itself does not have a keyboard shortcut. Okay. What was the other one that you were talking about? Text tool?
Yes.
The text tool does, it's the F8 key on the keyboard. So if you've got a programmable mouse, you basically just set it to F8 for that button, and then it would pop up the text tool. For the pick tool, since there isn't a keyboard shortcut that exists, you would have to create one. So if you right click the pick tool, say customize menu item, and then properties, what that will do is it will go to the properties of that pick tool. Let them pop up here, wherever they went. Here it is. So then we've got the properties of the pick tool. And
Okay.
over here, there's a shortcut keys tab.
Okay.
So you would click on shortcut keys and just assign it right here, any shortcut key that you want. But you have to realize that there's a lot of shortcut keys in CorelDRAW already. And
Okay.
so you want to choose something that's probably not already being used, like, I don't know, Control Alt P. See, look, that's my plot page. So Control Shift P. Let's run temporary script. I mean, there's a lot of, you'll see down here, it pops up what that key is automatically or already assigned to. Okay.
What
So
about
you just,
PT? What about PT?
what about what?
PT, pick tool.
So the problem is that's two different letters. You can't have two different letters. You can only have one letter and a combination of Alt, Control, or Shift.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
In CAD, in the CAD world, there's, you know, two-letter combinations. So
Okay.
that would work in CAD, but not so much in CorelDRAW. So again, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you can do something really weird like Alt and the quote button, you know, just a apostrophe.
Okay.
Because if you're just assigning it to the mouse, it doesn't have to be anything that you'd really click on with your keyboard yourself, because you're just assigning it to the mouse. So you can do something crazy like that. And then you'd hit assign, and then on your mouse end, you would say, look, I want this button to be mapped to Alt and the apostrophe.
Okay.
And then whenever you click, so then if I'm, you know, in this tool and I hit my button on my mouse, it would automatically go to the pick tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So have you ever used a programmable mouse?
Yes, I have, but I guess I change things up so often that I've never just stuck to one setting, one mouse. So I'll show you so this is the mouse that I have. Let me pull it over here. Here's the mouse that I have right here.
Okay.
So normally most programs that are programmable mice anyway, you're going to have an option up here for whether you want that to work in every application for the button that it's using, or to do application specific settings. I would do application specific, because that way you can have buttons that are specific to CorelDRAW. Okay, so I'm going to set it for Corel here, and then I would set this to a keystroke assignment, and I'm going to do Alt and that button.
Okay.
And press a valid key combination to create a shortcut. Okay, so I think that's, yep, that's set to that. And then this one, let's just set this to F8, which is what you were talking about before. Okay, so now I should have this button and this button are set to the pick tool and the text tool.
Okay.
So now let's give it a try.
Are you recording this?
Yeah,
Okay.
so should be. Okay, so then if I hit, let's see, I'm gonna hit the forward button. No, I'm already on that one, so I'm gonna hit this button. Text tool, pick tool,
Cool.
just with clicking my mouse.
I love
Yep.
it.
You can certainly do that. I used to, so when I was doing a lot of drawing, I used the pen a lot more than I did the mouse. And I used to assign gestures and stuff to the pen. So I could actually just draw the letter P and it would do something. It was pretty cool that way, but
Okay.
it's been a while since I've done that. Okay, good question though. What else you got, Brandy?
Okay, let's build a proof page. You have access to my Dropbox.
Do
So
I have access to your Dropbox?
yeah, I'm telling you, you do.
I do.
Okay, so let's just build a proof page with just lettering on it. And then you can show me how to put, like you've seen my logo, right?
Uh-huh.
It's in my email signature.
Yep.
Okay, so you've got my butterfly. Okay, so if I wanted to take my logo and put it on a proof page, how could we do that?
Okay, so when you're talking about a proof page, how would you like to bring it in? Do you want to just click on this add background button? Do you want to import it? Are we talking about StoneSpot Connect? What kind of proof page? Like, how do you want to get to that page? How do you want
I want to be able to put the same proof in StoneSpot and MemorialDESIGNER.
Okay.
But I see it just being like, you know, a pretty background, not something, let's just do something like an ivory colored background. And then let's put my logo down at the bottom.
Okay. So this button here, the add background button,
Okay.
that's meant to easily import a background that you can put behind your stuff. When you click it on your end right now, what it should bring in is basically a blue gradient. You know, it goes from dark blue to black, and that's what your button should do. Mine I've been messing with, and so it's a little bit different, but I'll show you how it works. Okay, so when I click on this add background button, what it's going to do is it's going to bring in a different file that looks like this. It's got the order number, the cemetery, the stain color, the version number, design.
Will it match my StoneSpot order number?
If you use StoneSpot Connect over here, and when you log into StoneSpot Connect, there is a button here called Create Template.
Okay.
Okay, so if you use this button, Create Template, it will find this order number, the 140680, and put it in there for you.
Okay, that's what I want.
If you use the background button, the add background button, then it won't, because it doesn't know what to go and find the information from. So if you're using StoneSpot, the best way to do it is to edit the template from StoneSpot. And so what we'll do is I'll open up my documents folder here, and it's under MemorialDESIGNER. And then it's going to be under the classic collection and then templates. And there's a template.cdr. This is where the StoneSpot Connect template is housed. So if I open that one up, you're going to see it's the same file. So it's the same file that brought in, right?
Okay.
And I think I shared one of these with you. I think you've got this same thing, because usually I do when I set up StoneSpot Connect. But the way that it works is you just edit this template file. So if you wanted your logo instead of Morris Monuments logo.
I think when we first started, I didn't have my logo.
I think so, probably. And you sent me an email this morning. So if I just go to your email, I've got your email selected on another monitor. And since I'm using Outlook as my email client, all I have to do is hit this button here, which is called Import Attachments from Outlook. And it will go to that email. It'll find your logo and it will import it for me. Otherwise, you would just go to File and Import, or click on the Import button here and go and find the thing, right? So here's your logo, or a version of your logo anyway, right?
Mhm. Until
So
Charlie's done with it.
it's nice.
Thank you.
So you can, I mean, you can decide how you want this to look and where you'd want to put it, but the basics is that you would put it, you know, on your template. And then you also mentioned an ivory background. So I have a rectangle here that you can just come in and choose. I don't know what color ivory is. It's not really this one, but pale yellow, chalk. I don't know what color ivory is.
Do pink. That's easy enough.
I know you like your magentas. Dusty rose.
We'll do Dusty Rose for now.
All right, so there's Dusty rose. So basically you just draw a rectangle or use the existing one, change the color of it, right?
Okay.
And then if I save this, so I'm just going to replace the existing template.cdr. Once I save it, then when I use the create template button in Stone Spot Connect, I'll get rid of this one. When I use that button, it's going to go and pull in that template. It's going to automatically fill in the information for the order, the cemetery, today's date, and the stone and all that stuff for you.
Love it.
So that works with Stone Spot Connect. This button here does not have any data behind it. So when you click on that one, it's not pulling in any data. It's just pulling in a template that you can go and change yourself.
So I would have to go in there and put in the stone order, the order number, the cemetery, the stone color, all of that.
Yeah, you'd have to come in here and type all that stuff in. So, you know, if it's this example, 140680 or whatever.
Okay.
Yep. And again, this template portion here, this is newer stuff. So if anybody doesn't have this and wants it, just let me know. Because right now, most people are gonna get just a blue and black background when they click on this button.
I think that's what mine is.
Yeah. The other thing that's nice about what we've gone to for this new update is that we've got, if you look here, there's an inside rectangle. And what we've done is we've set this inside rectangle as basically a safe zone for where your stone lies, and all your text is outside of that. So what it does when it brings in, when you click on this button now, in my latest update, when you click on it, it will actually resize the template for you to fit around your stone. I don't have that working yet with Stone Spot Connect's template, but we'll get there.
Okay.
That way it can auto, you know, put it around the stone, which I think is pretty cool.
Okay, I've got something else I'm gonna send you.
But yeah, I mean, the main thing is just open up those templates and change them. For this one, the add background, if you go to the documents folder, Memorial Designer, import, there's going to be a file called BK1, and that's the one that you would use for changing. So this is what it used to look like, just like this. This is the file you would change. In my update, once it's released, there are now multiple options. So there's a BK control, BK shift, and BK control shift. So there's actually 4 different options now for backgrounds.
Okay.
But that's all stuff that we're working on. So that's pretty exciting. Aaron, do you guys do any sort of template behind your design? You're muted right now, Aaron. Muted, you're muted. I see your lips moving, but I can't make out the word.
I'm just a mime today. No, yeah, I use the background, and then I've got, you know, some text that I throw on there at the bottom for the signature, and then our logo at the top.
Gotcha.
Okay, I just sent you another email.
Okay.
So what this is from a bronze company. It's their proof to me, but what I would like to do is take out the ARK Ramos and all their information, and then in the little box below it where it says client Magnolia Monuments, I would like to take out their branding and just drop mine in it.
Okay.
Is that something I can do in Corel?
Yeah, I mean, you're either this is a PDF file, so if we bring in that PDF, let's see, I'm just going to go to the background file real quick. Background. Okay, so I'm going to go to this file, hit my import button. Oops. See what happens here. Okay, so I just imported that PDF file into CorelDRAW. And
if you hit F4, will it center in the middle of the page?
So F4 is going to center your view. It's not going to center. It's not actually moving the piece itself. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this big, like this, somewhere in there. Yeah, I mean, you can certainly use this as a beginning point for what you want your template to look like.
For my bronze, I mean, for right this second, that would help me immensely. Just to lay like where ARK is. So is it a text? And I just, okay.
So this is text that's been converted to curves. You can get rid of that. This is text that's been converted to curves. This stuff is still text. So that's just all editable. You can edit that if you wanted to.
I say let's just put my logo there.
Yeah, so if you brought in, I already had it, but I deleted it. So let's bring it back here. Paste. So I don't know why they got some extra stuff in there as well. Yeah, you can you can start with this as, you know, a place to start, or you can just start fresh. Either way, if you start with your own design altogether, you know, then it will be unique to you and not anybody else. You can do anything like this. You just set up the page the way that you want it to be, and then you save it as that template file. With StoneSpot Connect, if we look at the template file for StoneSpot Connect, I'm gonna go back and get that one. The way that StoneSpot Connect knows how to map these different things is under the objects docker. You'll see that I have this named MD_order number. And this one here is MD_cemetery. This one is MD_litho. This one is MD_stone_orders_1. So this, by naming these objects, that's how StoneSpot Connect knows how to to the different things. So if you're going to do the same thing on here, you know, with whatever your things are, finish or whatever the case may be, you would need to change the name. So you can come in here and rename this to MD_litho or whatever the case may be, to match.
You know, I mean, I really do like this bronze company. So part of me, you know, if I could just pull up if I could just lay their template in there, and then, because the picture and everything would be on it, all the information would be on it. But if I could just interchange am I thinking about this wrong?
It's totally up to you how you want it to look. I mean, I'll show you a different example. Let me see if I can find one here. Sure, Tony Watson wouldn't mind me showing you what his looks like. If I got it here, here we go. So here's an example of another one. Pull up this design. Aaron, what did you say on yours? You just drop in text at the bottom and a different set of text at the top, or
Yes.
yeah. And I've seen some people do it that way too. Just have different text blocks that they throw in.
Yeah, I kind of like the way that yours is done, how it has, you know, the what cemetery it's going to, what order,
Yes.
I think some of that would be useful, especially when some of the drawings come back and they want to make changes instead of having to bring out the entire packet of paperwork.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so here's an example of Tony Watson's, just to give you an example, Brandy, of a different layout for a proof page. And he does stuff sideways.
I like that.
If I can add my 2 cents from a design perspective,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it's got to be careful with your proofs, because if they get too busy, they take away from the monument.
Right.
I think you should, less is more, and a minimalist approach to a proof is much better than having a bunch of stuff that maps to it. Now, if a company wants to use a second type of proof that's internal, that has, instructions or whatever, because that piece of paper is going to follow, or in the best situation, a paperless world where that image will follow the product through the production process,
Right.
then have a different type of template. But yeah, if I had something that was a real complex monument, I would want to have less information on it. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense.
Easy peasy, Brandy. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I'm gonna have to go back and watch this several times.
Yeah, which is perfectly fine. And if you need help on the back end, knowing how to map things, especially for Stone Spot Connect, let me know, so we can get those things to work out.
So will you email me that PDF of, just go ahead and put because that's an order I'm working on like right now. I need to get it out.
Yep.
If you just put change the client name to Win, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
And put the bronze plaque back on it and email it to me. That'd be awesome. I'll just send it right to him.
Okay, sounds good. We can do that.
But I do want to come up with my own template.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about templates for bronze and granite being different? Or do you think just make them both the same?
I would make them both. Well, they're going to be, is the measurements going to be different because you have stone measurements that are going to be different than a bronze piece, or are they going to be mounted on bronze?
Most oftentimes mounted on granite.
Okay, so if you got bronze, it's going to be mounted on granite, and you're going to have that reference. I would just see where on this proof it says stone order 1, order 2, order 3.
Yes.
You really put your measurements there. Or like I've had one that says this, description. If you're pulling stuff in from Stone Spot, that's different. But really, it's just a description line. The bronze is going to be a little different. If you wanted to show somebody the piece of bronze that's not on the granite separate, so they could focus on it more to approve that independently, then I would just show them without the granite, create 2 proofs. Now with this situation, with Memorial Designer, there's options for lots of templates. So therefore, why not? If it's easy.
Okay.
But
Well,
if you're surpassing the amount of, proof options, then.
like on this one in particular, I just need the bronze plaque itself because it's going on an existing marker. But like on markers that, you know, a flat marker with the bronze and it's unitized, yeah, I think that'd be cool to show it all together in the same proof.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can do either way. I mean, with Memorial Designer, there's new options that you can have these multiple templates. I mean, I would utilize that as an opportunity.
Okay, Cameron, then I know I want to upgrade to the new.
I've got hours banked customizing and modifying templates as part of, you know, the design process. And this is a beautiful thing.
Okay. All right. For that one reason, I know I want to upgrade to the newest version.
All right, we'll get you there. Okay. Yeah, so we can talk more about that. Just
Okay.
get yours nailed down to how you want it. But the basic idea though is make it your own, you know, make your template specific to you, specific to your company, specific to the way that you work, your workflow, that sort of stuff. I think that's important to be able to make it work for you. And
Yeah.
and again, like Charlie said, we're going to multiple backgrounds so that you can do different things if you want to show, you know, images behind it, or if you want whatever your different layouts are, that kind of stuff. I've got one company that has one background file for proofs, just an original or an upfront thing where the customer looks at it originally, and then another one when they actually approve it, it's a little bit different. It's got different wording on it. So there's, you know, different options that you can do for sure.
Okay.
Okay, so let's we're going to move on to the questions, some questions that I had via email from some different companies, and let me find it here. Okay, Tom had emailed me last week. Unfortunately, his email wasn't working, and so it didn't show up till after the meeting. But he was asking about the difference between combined and grouped objects, which is something that I know we've hit on before, but I'd like to hit on it again, just because I really want it to make sense to people. So I'm going to pull up a design here. Okay. Oops. Pull this up here. That's not it either. Sorry about that. I thought I had this file. All right, I'll just bring one in. We'll go about it this way. So I'm going to go to the classic collection of designs. We're going to go to designs, and then I want to go to some animals here to show you. Let's go with this one and this one here. And this one here. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a couple different images here. If we look at the way that this is drawn, okay, if we look at this is a different piece than this, which is a different piece than this. All of these trees and stuff, they are different pieces Okay, then we've got the inside portions of the trees, which are the frosted areas. And we've also got the inside portion of the elk here. And so if we look at the way that this is all drawn, combining pieces together, what that does is you can take pieces that are like other ones. So for instance, this one is like these ones, and it should really be attached to those to make things easier. So if I take that and I hold shift and I click on this one, when I combine it together, it becomes part of that object. So now it's part of that object and goes along with it. The more you can combine like objects, the better. Except that, you know, in this case, maybe this little piece of dirt or whatever, you would want to keep separate, because then you can move it around and place it where you need to if you had to move your design around, right? So there are benefits to having things combined together versus not having them combined. There are benefits of having things grouped. By grouping things, I could take this elk, holding down shift, grabbing both of those pieces, plus I could grab this piece that's by itself, and I can group those together. By grouping them, they move together and basically become, they're not one object, they're a group of objects, so it's just one grouped object. But they move, and you're able to resize them, you know, and flip them and that sort of stuff, because they're all grouped together. But because they are grouped, you can keep the different objects inside of them different colors. If I instead combined them, what ends up happening is the inside portions basically cut away from the other portion. And it's almost as if you had a cookie cutter and you were cutting into some dough. Like if the black part was your dough and you cookie cut into it, now you've got all these pieces that have, you know, come out of your cookie dough. So combining does not let you have multiple colors like this in your design, but grouping does, because grouping is basically just different objects that are grouped together. So in the object Docker, we're seeing a group of two objects, and then it's showing the two objects. Okay. These objects themselves that make up this portion of the design, they have been combined together because they're all like each other. And if I were to break them apart, you'd see that there's 27 different objects that make that up. It's very easy to just grab all of those inside objects and combine them so that they become one single object. Otherwise, what you would have to do is you'd have to come in here and grab each one of these, color it, make sure it's to the front, and make sure it's, you know, in the right area. So you'd have to come and grab every inside object, except for these ones that should then be, you know, a different color. So it gets a lot more difficult to do this by hand. And the other problem, if you're doing it by hand and coloring individual objects like this, is that when it comes to Granite Fills is looking for objects, and it's looking for objects of a certain color. So the more objects you have, the more searching it has to do. So right now it's having to search for 28 different objects just to color this in with Granite Fills. Whereas if it's combined together, all it has to do is look for one. Even if it's grouped, so if we had this all colored together and grouped it, it's still looking for all 28 of those objects inside the group. So it doesn't speed anything up as far as Granite Fills goes to have them grouped. It's only when we're combining those that it works. And you can see I accidentally combined this piece to there, so it inherited the frosted color. If I break it apart, holding shift to deselect it, then I'll recombine these pieces, and now this is separated from the rest, so I can color it again in the black. So when it comes to combining versus grouping, combining becomes one object that can only have one set of properties, and grouping maintains your individual properties for your different things. The last thing is, if you do have a group, so let's say we've got this and it's grouped, okay? If we wanted to change the color of this, just by changing it to blue, it's going to change the color of everything inside that group, which is not what you want to have happen most of the time, right? You want to select the individual pieces inside that group. So you can either come in here and go to the individual piece inside the object docker and change that color. Or if it is a grouped object, you can hold Control and click, and that will dig inside the group. And then you see I've got circles for my node, or for my bounding box handles instead of squares. That means I'm inside a group. So I can change that grouped piece without having to pull it out of the group, just by holding Control to select it. But sometimes if you've got a design that most of the time when you bring in artwork, always when you bring in artwork, when you bring in anything, it's going to come in as a grouped object, because it comes in as the name, as a grouped object, and the name of whatever the file was. So this is a grouped object of all these other things, right? And so when you bring in individual artwork pieces, they come in this way where they're a group. So you have to either ungroup them to get to the individual pieces, or you have to go and hold Control and dig into that group to get to what you want to get to. But does that make any sense? Does it shed any light on what a group is and what a combined object is?
Let me ask you a question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so like my cutlery drawer has knives, spoons, forks, teaspoons, all of that.
Yep.
So they are grouped together in a cutlery tray.
They're in a tray, right? That's like a
So
group.
they're grouped together in a cutlery tray.
Yep.
Okay, but if I take flour and cinnamon and sugar and blackberries and I combine them all together
In your cutlery drawer?
No.
Just kidding. That's gonna be a mess. That's not a group.
Okay, so if I put those all together and I put them in my KitchenAid mixer, then they're combined. They
Yep.
become one thing. They become a fruit cobbler.
Yep.
I got it.
Yep, that is true.
Okay, so one other question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so can you pull up that monument, the Baker monument you just had up?
Yeah, probably, if I remember. what it
They're
looked
gonna
like.
send us cookies now. We're talking about cookies and baking.
No, we're talking about cobbler.
Oh, cobbler. Who's sending cobbler out?
I'm making cobbler for my stepmom for Mother's Day. Okay, so this,
I
it
don't
can
know.
be any of these, it doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm just gonna pull in and design. I don't know where I grabbed that one from.
So if I put a marquee around the entire step top, I
Uh-huh.
can combine everything.
You could combine everything, but the question is, why do you want to combine everything?
No, this is just, I'm just asking a question. Okay, but the way that it comes in, it's all grouped. Now, this rose cascade to the left and right of the Andrews panel,
Uh-huh.
that is a group of litho and frost, correct?
Not necessarily, because if I look at this is actually already separated from that. They are not grouped in this particular design. Sometimes I have them grouped. Sometimes.
Okay, so hold on. Is that called layered?
No. Layers are actually one level higher. Like you can have, and this is where, so in CorelDRAW, it gets a little bit more complicated because you can have layers of objects as well. Most of the time I'm working on a single layer, but in your vernacular or in the way that you're thinking about it, they are layered. They're stacked on top of each other, right?
Okay.
I really think of it more as an object stack. So this is an object, this is an object, and the way that they are stacked, just like pieces of paper, we've got the light colored one is on top of the dark one. That's why you can see the light colored one. If the dark one was on top of the light colored one, you wouldn't see it because it's covering it up, right? So we've got this object and we've got the other object, but they're not a group. If we grabbed both of them, we could group them. Now they are a group, and I can
Do they
move them
move
as a
them all
group.
together?
I can move them all together. I can flip them all together. You know, grouping is, it's the idea behind grouping is to simplify the things that are in your design so that you can have like this and maybe even the panel, you know, so you're just grouping like items that you would want to be able to move around like that.
Okay.
Instead of having to grab each and one, you know, all three of the items here and all of those. Okay, so that's how grouping works. But
Okay. Since Andrew's already moves together, is it a group?
I grouped it just then, yep. I just grouped all three of these as separate things. So we've got this one was a group, and I grouped this one, and then I had grouped this one as well. So I had three different groups of objects.
Okay, so why would I want to combine those? Because I could just group all three of those units together and still move them unanimously.
If you took all three of them, you could build a group.
Right.
And then you could move them like this. Right?
So why would I even ever need to make it combined?
Combining is different. Combining is what we've done to the inside portion of this flower. All of these individual pieces have been combined together so that they become one object. Okay, so
those are combined already.
these ones are combined. All of the inside portions of this have been combined together. If I break it apart, there's 56 different objects that make up that flower. Okay, and if I combine them together, then there's only one that makes up. It's just one object with all these other subpaths. The reason,
so if I didn't like one of these like flowers or a leaf or something, I could uncombine it and then jack that leaf out of there and then recombine it again, right?
yeah, so uncombining is called breaking apart. So you'd break it apart so that they're individual pieces. Then I can take this leaf here and get rid of it.
Bye-bye.
Okay. The difference though is that we've also got this object behind it. So we've got, you know, the outline, right? So you've got two things you can do. You can either mess with the outline. When it comes to node editing, you can come in and delete the nodes and redraw nodes in order to get this to work. Or you could just delete it altogether, okay? And then you take your new object, recombine it so it becomes one object, and then you're just going to re-outline it. So you can use the frosted outline button if you want to. That will do it quickly. Or if you use the contour tool, then you've got more control over how much your contour is and size and that sort of stuff. 0875, whatever your number is. So that's going to contour and, you know, build your outline for you. If I look at this outline that it created, because of the gap, because from here to here is the 0.0785 or whatever number I chose, there's enough space in here that it left a hole. Okay, there's enough space here that it left a hole. There's enough space here that it left a hole. And so if I pulled this outline away from the rest of the design, you'll notice that there are holes showing through in that black outline.
Yes.
And that, again, if I break it apart, then we're going to see that there are individual pieces in here that I can get rid of if I want to, but those had been combined to the black area in order to show through to what's underneath it. Okay.
I also have altered that with the knockout tool.
This here is, it's already knocked out. Like this is already showing through to the polish,
Oh,
right? That's what
Did
it's
you-
doing.
reverse knock it out.
No, well, so reverse knocking out would be taking these and combining them with these parts, right? But you
Okay,
can do that. You just grab it and hit the fill grayscale, and that's going to change all of these inside pieces to frost instead of the polish. But I don't know that you would want to do that.
yeah,
Most of the time what I do is I don't want these pieces to begin. Maybe I'd want this one to separate the stems, but most of the time I don't want these inside pieces. So what I normally do is I'll break it apart. I'll hit Control K. I will hold Shift and click just the outline because that's what I want to keep. So I'm deselecting that. And if I wanted to keep this one, I'd hold Shift and click on that one as well. So now it's just got all these tiny pieces in there that I don't want, and I'd hit delete to get rid of them. Now I don't have those anymore. But now you'll see that there's this inside portion, okay? You can't see through to it. You can't see through to what's underneath it until I take that one, hold Shift, click on this one, and then combine them together. Once they're combined, then it's going to give you that effect of being able to see through to what's underneath it.
okay,
And that is on the black side, combined objects, as opposed to this one where these are all the frosted ones. So yes, I mean, you can pull different things out by breaking it apart and getting to the individual pieces, or you can always do it with the shape tool and go and edit the nodes that make up that design.
okay,
Does that make sense?
kind of.
And
I'm gonna have to think about that. You don't have enough hours today to make that think.
and why you would want to combine versus group. So technically you could have, if we broke all these apart, you could group them together so that they become an object that way. But the downside is all of these inside veins, you would have to color individually. Okay, so I'd have to come in and grab the vein, and I'd have to color that one. I'd have to grab this vein, and I'd have to color that one. And so you'd have to do that for each of these inside pieces. You'd have to know, how you want those all to be colored, color them all, and then you could group it, which you can do that, but it's much easier if instead you just hit the combine button, because it will do all of that stuff for you, where it's showing through to what's underneath it, which is really what you want. You just want to be able to see that V line underneath it, whatever that color is there.
Okay, now that makes sense.
And it also, because it's one object, when it comes to granite fills, if I come in here and click on a granite color, it only has to find one object as opposed to 55 different objects. So it speeds the granite fills up the less it has to look for objects.
Okay,
So if you had, a whole bunch of these, and just to show you a complicated design, if we had a whole bunch of stuff like this, and we had broken it all up into individual pieces, when you go to fill it in with granite colors, it's taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, it's still thinking here because it's going through and finding every single one of those individual objects in order to color it in with the right color. So the more complicated your design, the more it's going to take as far as time goes to fill it in with the granite colors. Now, obviously, you're not going to ever really be this complicated. I just did this to prove a point, but the more objects you have, the longer it takes for it to fill. Okay, and it's still filling, it's still thinking. So now it's finally done, but that's because it had 1,404 different objects that it had to go and fill.
okay,
Right. So the more you can combine things, the more that you can make like items the same, the better. If I if I look at this, just what makes this up right now is 351 objects. If I were to simplify this, okay, I can fill this grayscale, fill this grayscale, fill this one grayscale, and we've got this one I want to fill grayscale. I'm just arranging the way that these are done, and then I'm going to knock this out like this. Okay, so here's our object. Now I had combined everything together, so it made the text a part of the design. Normally you're not going to have that as part of the design. But just to show you, instead of 351 objects, now I've only got 10, right? And so when it's going to look for granite, or when it's trying to fill things in, it only has to find 10 things instead of 350 of them. And so it works a lot faster.
Okay.
Because you're able to combine pieces that are similar, things that, you know, are the same and need to be combined together. Because you can do that, you're making it easier for the design to do what it needs to do. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. We're going to keep hitting this over and over again because I think it takes a while for it to click in. And the more you do it yourself, the more that you actually combine things or group things, I think the more you're going to realize how it works. But yeah, so hopefully, Tom, I know you're not here. Tyler, you could tell Tom that I answered his question for him. Hopefully it answers. Hopefully it answers what he was hoping for, but let's, okay. So that was one of his questions. The next one of his questions was how to add spacing between characters by a percentage. So if I have my name, okay, I usually add character spacing by taking the shape tool and dragging on this, and that will change the amount of space between each of those letters. But if you want to do it by a percentage, you would come over to the text docker over here. And then in the text docker, there is this paragraph tab, and then this is sometimes collapsed, so you would want this to not be collapsed. And there's what's called character spacing there. So you can change the percentage to, let's say, 15%, and that's going to give you 15% more spacing between each of the letters. And that way, if you had multiple lines of text, you would know that if you change this one to 25, you can come in here and change this one to 25, and they would be the same that way. Whereas if you're doing it visually, you don't know exactly how much it is. So if I change it like that, you're going to see that it changes that number there. It's also changing. So the way that the shape tool works, when we pull on this, if we pull on it, it's giving us both character spacing and word spacing at the same time. If you hold Control when you click on it, it only changes character spacing, not word spacing. And if you hold Shift when you do it, then it only changes word spacing and not character spacing. So I like to do it this way usually as opposed to numbers, but you can do it either way. And one thing that Charlie does a lot that I don't usually ever do is he uses the Attributes Eyedropper. So you can take the attributes of one object and apply it to another object. So it took that percentage of this one and applied it to this one. If you were trying to, match percentages too. But that's how you would add spacing between characters by a percentage. If we go back to this design that we had created, one of his questions was how to reduce nodes and smooth things out. Okay, so when we created the outline of this, we used the contour tool to create that outline, right? And so it created that outline for us. But when we look at the outline, there are some nodes in here that we may not need, like this one here. We don't really need that. This one here, we don't really need that. This one here, we don't really need that one. So if we wanted to clean up these nodes, if you double click a node, it deletes it. If you double click anywhere on the line or the curve, it will add a node. If you select multiple nodes at the same time, you can just hit delete on the keyboard to delete those. Okay, you can see here that this one maybe curves a little differently now. So sometimes as you delete it, you're going to need to come in and change that curve or edit it a little bit. So depending on how much you delete or how much you're smoothing it out, you might need to pay attention to that. This is doing it manually. If you want to do it all at the same time, you can select all these nodes. I just double click the pick tool, or I hit Control A to select them all. You can see down here we've got 292 nodes. There is a reduce nodes button up here, which will automatically delete as many nodes as it can, basically without changing the look of that design. So it went from 292 to 233. But there's still a few that I don't really need. So most of the time I use curve smoothness as opposed to reduce nodes, because smoothness will reduce even more. Now we're down to 184 nodes. But the difference is smoothness is going to change the look of your design the more you smooth it out. So if I go even higher, it's going to change it even more and not reduce the nodes, super a lot. When I'm smoothing out my nodes, I normally don't go above 10 for a smoothness number. I'm usually between 5, 7, or 10, somewhere in there, as far as smoothness goes. But you can see here how you can come in and edit these, double click, smooth it out. So that's reducing nodes and smoothing. There are also smooth tools where you can click and drag and smooth things out too, like this right here. If I click and drag along that, the more I drag, the more smooth it's going to become. If I have a bigger nib, then it's going to become even more smooth. And I'm just clicking and dragging along it. There's this little thing here that looks a little bit wonky. If I click on that, smooth it out, it's going to smooth that out. Like that. So those are questions that Tom had. The last one was welding and trimming, but I think we'll have to hit that one another day. All right. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to cover today specifically? I had one other question from another user that was asking about default text. When you start a new document and you use the text tool, every document has defaults, okay? And text is one of those things that is document specific as far as defaults go. So I set MD Roman 1 inch and horizontal alignment to be my default, but if you want to change it to something else, or if yours has reverted to something like Arial, which is Corel's standard default, if you want to change it, what you do is you grab your text tool before you click anywhere, then you change your text. So if I wanted to go to MLC Artline, for instance, as soon as I hit enter, it asks me to change the document defaults. I'm going to do artistic text and click OK. If I want 1.5 inches to be my default, I would type it in and hit enter. I'd switch it to artistic and I'd click OK. If I wanted it to be centered or no alignment or left aligned, I would change my alignment here click artistic text and click OK. I prefer center alignment just because most of the stuff that we do is going to be centered. Once you've got it set, this is now the default for this document. But if we want that to be the document default for every new document, we would come up to Tools and say Save Settings as default. And then we would just check all of these buttons here. That way it's going to save this document default as the default for everything. Now if I create a new document and go to my text tool, it's now that new default there. The first time you set up Corel, for some reason, I'm not sure why it is, but it requires you to do those steps twice. So you'd have to set your default, close out a Corel Draw, reopen it, and then go back and do it again, and then save it as default. So you have to do it twice in order for it to stick. I'm not sure why, but that's the way that it works. So if for some reason it's not sticking, just set it to default, close it out, open it up, set it again, set as default, and you should be good to go. But that is how you change your default font for the specific document and then new documents. So I'm going to change this back to the way that I like it, which is MD Roman 1 inch. And then I'll save that as my default. All right, any questions? No, we're good. All righty. I think that gets us through this group. If you have any questions, just let me know. And thanks for Brandy sending those emails, and Tom, thank you as well. It's definitely helpful to have things to go over specifically. So that's good. I'm gonna stop my sharing, and next week on Tuesday, if you have other things that you want to cover, certainly let me know. And Brandy, if you need to go over the template stuff in the meantime, we can do that as well. But I would put some thought into it as to what you want your templates to look like, and we can go from there.
And then you'll just build me one.
Yep.
Okay,
All right.
I'm gonna call you here in a few minutes.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks
Okay.
everybody for joining.
Bye,
All right,
guys.
thanks.
Yep. We'll see you on Tuesday.